But, I mean, we're already in, I guess. So can you kind of just introduce yourself?
My name's Coach Wetzel. I've been the head coach here at Waukee Northwest for the last 4 years since we opened up as a school. I also was the head coach for Waukee High School before we split. For about 4 years, I was the assistant coach. Prior to that, we started the program back in, I believe it was 2011. I was the assistant coach for Jeff Vaghi. Jeff Vaghi is also one of my volunteer assistant coaches now, so he's still part of the program. But yeah, I'm kind of proud of, the fact that we started a grassroots tennis program here in Waukee and have seen a good amount of success out here ever since.
Yeah, like how did you initially get your own start in tennis? Like what made you fall in love with the sport?
So I started playing in my driveway with my neighbor friend when I was in elementary school, and we just had a lot of fun with it. And on those long summer days when we were just bored, we would ride our bikes 3 miles up to the tennis courts, the closest tennis courts, and we would just play tennis all day. And that's just kind of how I picked it up. Never took lessons or anything like that. Eventually played in a couple tournaments in my middle school years, and then played high school tennis. I played it on varsity all 4 years, and had a lot of fun with it. Just fell in love with the sport, loved it. It was a passion of mine. Played a couple years in college, Division III, and then I left my college team to pursue coaching. So I was the head coach of a high school team up in La Crosse, Wisconsin, when I was still in college. So I did that for 3 years. Until I graduated. And then I took some time off as I kind of moved around the country a little bit to pursue various teaching jobs. I've been a physical education teacher ever since I graduated from college in 2000. And then once the Waukee program opened up and they were wanting to start their own program, they used to be a co-ed program with Urbandale, I was very interested in it, and I got into it with, like I said, Jeff Vaghi, and we've just been on a really fun ride ever since. So
yeah. Did you get into the program like initially it was like getting started from complete scratch, and like had you had any experience with doing anything like that? Because obviously you said you were coaching earlier.
Sure, yeah.
But like that's completely different levels.
Yeah. So yes and no. I feel like tennis was already a fairly established sport out here in Waukee when we started the program. So it wasn't like we were introducing the sport to kids. To a lot of kids, we've done that for them over the years. But we were fortunate enough to have several players that were committed tennis players. So we had a good amount of success right off the bat. By no means were we, a top team in the state or anything, but it was, we found a lot of success early on, and we just kind of built on from that.
Yeah. So before the interview, we kind of talked about this, and I want to talk about the Northwest stuff and philosophy. But like, what was like your kind of successes at Waukee? Like what did you build a program to? Like you kind of said a little bit that you won a championship right before we split, mm-hmm. which is like huge. Like was that like the major accomplishment? Or did you have other things before that?
Yeah, I mean it's always fun to win, right? And that's part of coaching. That's why we get into it. But yeah. I think the biggest successes we've had are just the development of relationships with our players. I mean, it's been a lot of fun to see these guys grow over the years. We've had many guys. When I was the assistant coach, we would try to develop, again, when we didn't have as many club players, I would say, involved in the sport, we were really heavy on developing JV players, younger players, trying to get them to the point where they could contribute at the varsity level by their junior or senior year. And so we had a lot of guys that were, not traditional tennis players that were athletic enough where they could play well, and we could teach them the basics, the concepts of how to play the game. And that was a lot of fun to see those players grow through the years. And just at a personal level too, it's been really fun attending graduation parties, at the end of every season, or with us being a spring sport. And it's been fun following our players and how they've now gotten married, graduated from college, started families of their own. I think that's been definitely the greatest accomplishment of our coaching careers is just to see these boys turn into young men, and really become successful members of their communities. So that's definitely been the biggest, success story, I feel like, from our tennis program. But, obviously the winning too is fun. Yeah. It's hard not to enjoy that. So, going from, we've always had a state qualifier ever since our first year at the individual state tournament. We had our first single state champion in 2014 with Alex Brown. And then we continued that back in, I think it was 2019. We had our first doubles champion with Noah Burmeister and Will Eklund. And then we won our first team title in 2021 for Waukee, which was the last year we were together before we split programs into Northwest and Waukee. And then we were able to, win that quadruple crown and be the second school to ever do that, which I'm proud to say, in the history of high school tennis in Iowa, to win the boys singles title, doubles title, the co-ed doubles title, and then win the team title as well. That was pretty special. So
yeah, kind of like in that transition period between like coming off the championship at Waukee. Obviously, this team was split in half. Did you always know that you wanted to come to Northwest? Was that like more a personal decision, or did you want like a fresh start?
Yeah, that's a great question. Really, ultimately, I think there were several reasons why I wanted to come over to Northwest. The main reason being that I knew my son was eventually going to be on the team at Northwest. We live, a mile from Northwest, so I knew my kids would eventually be at school there. I really wanted, it was always been a dream of mine to be able to coach my son, and that's happening now with him as a freshman. It's been a lot of fun. So that was kind of my driving factor for wanting to come over to Northwest. It was also really cool when we developed the plans for the tennis facility over at Northwest. Jim Dewey, my athletic director, was very gracious to involve me in the planning for that. And so I shared a few emails back and forth with the architect for the plans and was able to modify a few things from the original plans. And they really gave me everything I asked for at that complex. And it's a beautiful facility. I feel very fortunate to be able to coach on those courts. And, we've been able to host the boys' team state tournament for the last couple of years. So it's really been a great setup over at Northwest.
Yeah, like what did you ask for? Like what was like different about the initial plan that you're like, okay, I wanted this added.
Yeah.
Then you had a fresh start.
So after already been coaching for 10 years and have seen all the different facilities across the state, I kind of took away things from each facility saying, I really like that, and I really like this. And so one of the main things was having walkways in between the way the facility is set up is there are 4 quadrants of 3 courts. The original plans had them all it was like a line of 6 and a line of 6.
Oh,
so
so
they were going to be right next to each other. And so I said, well, it's going to cost a little bit more money, but can we, add 10 foot of walkway space, in between, the 2 ends from north and south, and then can we do more of a spectator viewership area, right down the middle of the complex, and that's what we were able to do. They put bleachers in there. There's a beautiful storage facility right there at the courts, which is really something we for many years we did not have at Waukee High School, and it's just been really fun to be able to host events there and just be really proud of what we were able to do on those courts.
Yeah. So I want to dive into possibly like last year, because last year was possibly the most dominant a team has been here at Northwest, maybe like rivaling the girls swim. You probably don't know about that, but basically like they had a whole bunch of points besides the point. So can you kind of like talk about like how incredible some people just don't realize, like the amount of people that I've talked about the tennis championship, they don't realize like how incredible it is to win not 1, not 2, not even 3, but 4. Like what?
Sure.
Like, so obviously you guys won the team state, the individual, and doubles, which is like kind of unique to tennis specifically because you're able to win a title of just 2 people, just 1 person, and a team.
Mm-hmm.
It would be, I guess, like wrestling, but wrestling doesn't have 2 people wrestling at the same time,
right.
which would be sick, but that'd be kind of weird. And then you have which some people would say was talked less about, like the co-ed one. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you think, like, the value of just being that good and that deep to be able to do that?
Yeah, and really the key to be able to do something like that is you really have to have special players in your program. You really have to have elite players. If a team could get 1 or 2 elite players on the same team, that's incredible. Like you're going to have a lot of success. We happen to have 3 elite level players because when you get to the end of the season, you go to an individual state, your players have to choose whether they go singles or doubles, so they can't do both.
They can't do both?
Can't do both, so you have to have players like I said, elite level
Make
players
decisions
in both singles and in doubles.
Oh shoot! I thought you could do both.
You cannot. No, you can for the team tournaments.
Oh,
You can
okay.
play both, but not for individuals. So
Is team both singles and doubles then?
it is. Team is singles and doubles.
So is the team tournament completely different than the individual tournament?
It is, yeah. So it's separate. So I feel like wrestling, they place a little more importance on the traditional tournament where they have the individuals wrestling to collect points,
Yeah.
and then there's also the separate team duels. Similar in tennis, however, there's a little more team importance placed on the team in state tournament. So there's no collection of points at the individual. It's just kind of a really cool, showdown of the best singles players and the best doubles teams in the state.
Yeah.
So there's no collection of points, but it's really a cool deal for those players to be able to play against the very best in the entire state and take home, hopefully some hardware. So we were able to do that in back-to-back years. Actually, the last 2 years, we've won both singles and doubles. So Caden Taylor won singles titles the last 2 years in 23 and 24. And then Kellen Crowett and Jake Nelson won the doubles titles in also 23 and 24. So to be able to do that is pretty special. You really have to have a special crew of guys. And then team-wise, too, I talk about the elite players, but, the depth that we have on our team, it's the guys. Because when you're playing a team varsity meet in tennis, every match is worth 1 point, so they're not weighted. So every match, your number 6 match is just as important as your number 1 match. So for us to have guys that you can have the elite players at the top of your lineup, but you can also have some of the best 4, 5, and 6 players in the state at their positions.
Yeah, because in order to win, it can't just teeter off at
Exactly.
1 and 2.
It truly is a team effort. You can't win a team title without just a couple guys. With just a couple guys, you really have to have depth at those spots, and we definitely had that last year, which is why I don't think we didn't give up a match in our entire postseason run, which was I think it was
ridiculous.
3 matches at Team State, and then it was the 2 matches leading up to Team State. That was also part of the postseason. So we went 5 meets without giving up a match, which was pretty incredible. It really is a testament to those players and how hard they fought at the highest level at the biggest moment of the season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's not necessarily one's better than the other, but would you say which one would be more impressive, having the depth of a team and being able to win the state title versus having either one or both of the singles and then doubles? Would you say which one would be more valuable as a program? Would you say that producing the high level athletes versus having the depth?
Honestly, what's been so special about this team is you kind of have to have both, right? Some teams have the elite talent, but then they taper off a little bit toward the back end of their lineup. Or some teams are very solid throughout their lineup, but they maybe don't have those special players that can win, at the high level 1, 2, 3 spots in the lineup. And we happen to have both last season. I mean, we really had both the combination of the elite players at the top and then the incredible depth that we had at the bottom of our lineup. I mean, we had Gavin Luke and Sean Sinoki last year make it to the semifinals of the doubles state tournament. They ended up finishing 4th, which is amazing. Really, really good finish. They did not even play in our doubles lineup at Team State. They were our number 4 doubles team. So you play 3 doubles teams in that team aspect. So to not even have one of the top doubles teams in the state, on your roster for the postseason run, just because we didn't have space for them. It wasn't their fault. They were still incredible players. That just goes to show you the depth that we had on our lineup. And that's really what ultimately makes this team so special. Even continuing into this year is just how much depth we have, up and down our lineup.
What do you think you can attribute that depth to, especially not just depth in general, but having the super high highs as well? Because the team has at least last year and this year too, where you have people going super Caden Taylor, possibly one of the best tennis players to come out of
ever.
Yeah, exactly. To come out of Iowa, and he's just dominant, right? But then also still have not necessarily space, because obviously it's competitive and there's only a certain amount of spots on the varsity spot. But how did you have that much depth and also still the high level players?
Sure, yeah. So you really have to have a community that supports the sport of tennis. Tennis is a little bit more of a niche sport in that because of our weather in Iowa, you really have to have access to indoor courts. So it really takes a buy-in from the players to say, you know what, and from the families to say, we're going to spend a lot of time on this sport. We're going to get you in the wintertime. We're going to get you indoors. You know, we have other sports, basketball, you know, lots of other sports that are competitive in the same season as when they, you know, would play indoors over the winter. And so that buy-in from those players that, no, tennis is my sport. I love this sport. You know, we got a really cool thing going out here in Waukee. This is something I want to commit to. There really has to be that buy-in from those families. And I think that helps having tennis families, like the Taylor family, for example. Both mom and dad were college tennis players. All three of the kids in that family are high-level tennis players. So, that makes a huge difference right there. And I think too, you know, we've had the tennis camp that we've run for many, many years, ever since the days of Waukee. You really have to start at the youth level, so you have to get a buy-in. I usually see about 150 kids this summer in our tennis camps, and if I can just get 5 to 10% of those kids to love the sport, you know, they don't have to be all-stars when they come in as second or third graders. But if they're like, this is great, I love tennis, this is for me. For example, my own son, he's a little guy. You know, he's always been the first percentile for size. But tennis is a sport where you don't have to be big to be successful.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think it's kind of an equalizer sport where, you know, you can really play at a really, really high level, and you don't have to be a physically imposing athlete in order to be an elite level player. So I think in that aspect, I think tennis is a very inviting sport for a lot of players who are looking for something that maybe fits their mold. So yeah, it's definitely the buy-in at the young level. It's the years of development, and it's really the families that are willing to commit traveling sometimes to, you know, USTA tournaments across the country. You know, there's a lot of that going on that people don't realize, you know, how much time and effort, you know, these families put into, you know, tennis. It's definitely one of those sports where you really have to kind of find your passion. It's not a traditional team sport, you know, where you can get on a team with a bunch of friends and I'm having a blast, this is great. Tennis, you're really kind of on an island sometimes. You know, you're going to those USTA tournaments and you don't really know anybody there sometimes, you know. So there's definitely a lot of buy-in in this community within the sport, which makes a huge difference.
Yeah, what would you say, like, at what point did you get that buy-in from players? Obviously, like, you're at Waukee and you built it from the kind of the ground up there. Do you think you just transferred over to Northwest and just kind of happened naturally, where you didn't have to, like, to some sense restart and get people to buy in? Because, like, teams have problems with that all the time. Just like having people be like, be committed to this. Like, if we all of us commit, like, we could have a shot at championship. I mean, obviously the team does, and like all of them committed. But like, at what point did that like either like tip over and hit to the point where like you had a whole bunch of more committed athletes or not?
I don't know that it really tipped over at any point. I think it was a slow build. I think it truly was a grassroots build from a fairly basic level with some success. But then we just, every year we got a little bit better. Finally, by I think it was 2016, we qualified for our first team state tournament, which was our goal for so long. And I think there might have only been 1 year since then that we didn't qualify for team state. So then that goal became, let's see if we can get to the final, you know, and then that goal became, let's win this thing,
win
you
the
know,
championship.
Exactly. And so I think once you get that momentum going, I think the younger kids, you know, the middle schoolers, the upper elementary kids that see, wow, they start looking up to these kids like, oh, these Northwest guys, these Waukee guys are really cool, really good tennis players. I would love to be able to play on that team someday, you know, and so again, it's that buy-in, you know, and you're getting kids excited about the sport and about playing the team at a young age, so they have time to develop. So by the time they get to the high school team, they're established players, and it's very easy to work with a team that's already established with talent, and then you're just kind of tweaking, strategizing, and doing things to kind of make it work at the team level. Because team tennis is a lot more fun than when you're just going to clinics, when you're just going to tournaments.
By yourself. Yeah.
You meet people. I mean, we've got great coaches in this area at the club level. I think a lot of kids meet each other and they develop friendships that way, and I think they have a lot of fun. It's really is a great program that we have set up in this area in general. But I do feel like the team aspect really is special, and it is a different feeling than, what these players experience at the tournament level year round. I mean, they're supported by their teammates. It's not me against you, it's us together playing, with a common goal,
Yeah.
So it truly is a different feel.
We talked a lot about like depth and like also the kind of like the grassroots level, but how would you say in these final few minutes, I guess, like how do you get those people who are just starting and not like committed to the level of, I'm competing like nationwide and like going to like all that kind of stuff to get up to a level where they're like contributing to varsity and stuff like that?
Make it fun. Make it fun. We at camp, that's kind of what I stress, because our camps are usually a 4-day a week camp, and we only go for a couple weeks. So our time with them is pretty limited. So during that time, we're trying to get these kids to get excited about the sport, have fun with the sport, learn a little bit about the sport. In 4 days, we're not going to turn these kids into championship level players, right? But we want to at least start building that foundation to say, hey, what do you think? Is this fun? Is this a fun sport? Is this something you want to continue pursuing? And then they can make decisions outside of our camp to say, is this something, did you really enjoy it? I get a lot of emails from parents saying, hey, my son or my daughter really enjoyed your camp. Where can I start playing more tennis? And that's when I offer them the different clubs that they can get involved in, so they can continue, building on that. And so I really feel like that's critical, when you get these kids in at a young age, just to get them to love the sport.
Yeah. Kind of coming in close a little bit, like, but this year and this team, so obviously, like, you're kind of in the beginning of the season, but, like, what can we expect from this team? Because we're going to, like, the community's going to have the highest of expectations considering you won every single possible championship at the top level. Yeah, it's like,
where do you go from here?
Yeah, exactly. Where do you go from here? It's like, oh, I'll do it again. Like,
yeah.
What's the expectation, or, like, what can you see and, like, tell us about this team this year?
Well, we obviously will maximize our potential to its fullest. Every team every year is a little different. You gain guys, you lose guys, and so I think just when we get to the end of the season, if we can all look at each other and say, I had a lot of fun, that was great. These are memories that I'm going to have with me for the rest of my life. That's where I would ultimately love to see, the success of our program. Now, when it comes to winning and losing, I do think that this team this year is pretty high expectations. So I would expect that to kind of be similar to last year's team. But again, you just never know. You just never know how things are going to end up. And we, are just really excited about each and every team every year. And what can we accomplish with this team? And I feel like, every season we've done probably a little bit more than what we expected to at the beginning of the season. So if we feel like we're truly, I don't want to say overachieving, but if we feel like we're reaching our fullest potential, then I feel like we'll have thought that we had a successful season.
Sweet. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. Do you have any closing remarks or anything you'd want to say or anything like that?
Just June 3rd and 4th, we will be hosting once again Team State at our Northwest court. So we would love for as many Northwest supporters to be out there as possible. Our guys love to hear, applause and support, and just knowing that their community has their backs and their classmates have their backs and their teachers and everybody invested in Northwest has their backs. And so we would love to see as many people out there as possible.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much, Coach, for coming on the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks.